What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the reveal of the number 7 team in my 2020 NFL Power Rankings with a very fascinating deep dive into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Before we hop in, a quick reminder, please do hit that like button down below. It really helps support my channel and the series. This Tampa Bay team has completely flipped the script. I don't remember a team changing their expectations so much over the course of one offseason, because they went from, all right, it was another disappointing year of Jameis Winston. Do we bring him back? What do? We had some fun last year. We tried to make the playoffs, to now they have Tom Brady, and the expectation here is Super Bowl or bust. And it is crazy. I am super excited to talk about this team, and there is a ton to talk about. So if you're new to the series, what we do is we go through the roster, we rank each position group, how they stack up against the rest of the league. While we do that, you will be looking at my own custom Madden roster. So while it is a video game, I realize that they are my own ratings, and it's a nice copyright-free graphic to use to show you how I perceive each player. Then we're going to take a look at this team's schedule, go game by game, talk about their Vegas over-under and my win total expectations for the 7th ranked Buccaneers. But first, we are going to take a look at the coach and culture ranking that is very important in my power ranking calculations, and I do believe in the coaching culture in place here. I've always been a big Bruce Arians fan. I like Todd Bowles as well on the defensive side of the ball. These guys have always had a pretty nice track record together. So they're going to rank 9th for overall coaching and culture, 12th on offense, 10th on defense. Really well-balanced staff. You obviously have the leadership in place from Tom Brady as well that I think will play an even larger role in a weird COVID season. So I think everything is off to a good start. When you look at the coaching staff in place, some of the continuity entering next year despite all of the turnover on this roster, although it's not a crazy amount of turnover, but anytime that quarterback is changing shape, you are going to have a different looking team for sure. So I do think Bruce Arians is going to adjust his play calling a little bit towards Tom Brady's skill set. It's always been a very vertical heavy offense, and I think there will still be those deep shots in there. You can't have an offense with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and not go vertical with the football. But I do think Tom Brady is a short to intermediate passer first, especially at this point in his career, but even throughout the course of his career. And, drawing defenses in with an annoying passing game can open up those vertical passing lanes where Tom Brady can be very efficient throwing those deep balls. So I do think we'll see a different looking Bruce Arians offense, and I also think we'll see a different looking Tom Brady offense, kind of these two playing off each other's strengths a little bit. We'll talk about Tom Brady in just a second, but I do want to mention Todd Bowles. I think his aggressive 3-4 defense has really a lot of potential this year with the personnel kind of finally in place here in Tampa Bay. It's taken a few years to kind of craft the unit in front of him that he wants, but I do think this is one of the more talented defenses he'll have to work with, and I think we're going to see a really good defense here in Tampa Bay as well. So if 7th overall is an optimistic projection, I think a lot of hope in this coaching staff is a large part of that. But then, of course, Tom Brady coming in here as we transition to the roster review. They're going to rank 7th at the quarterback position. I think Tom Brady, while the physical traits aren't so much there, does bring you the sharpest mind in the NFL. And what's nice is, while he doesn't have the physical traits to make up for the sort of receiving core that he had in, say, New England last year, he is now coming in here with extremely explosive receivers. They're going to help create some of that extra separation and really let the mental aspect of the game shine for Tom Brady. He's still remarkably accurate on all 3 levels of the game. I think I've even been a little bit too critical of his deep passing accuracy. I think where he struggles as far as opening up the field vertically was not having vertical threats in New England last year, but a big part of the vertical passing game is play extension, because as good as an offensive line as you may have, it can be very difficult to have the time to go vertical. And Tom Brady just is not buying that time with his feet, and it is what it is. It's why he ranks 7th and not number 1. He has physical limitations. They will show on a game-to-game basis. but Tom Brady's strengths are his strengths. He is quick with the football and with his mind. He is accurate and efficient, and I think we will see a lot of the death by 1,000 cuts type of quarterbacking that Tom Brady has shown over the course of his career. So a massive upgrade coming from Jameis to Tom Brady. Even if on a week-to-week basis, the upside might not actually be as large as it was with Jameis, as weird as that sounds, because Jameis had some pretty explosive games last week. You aren't going to have that uncertainty going into every week, not knowing what kind of quarterback you're going to get, and it's really going to help I think, establish continuity with this team that has just been lacking under Jameis Winston, to say the least. And then you do have Blaine Gabbert as the backup. I could be wrong about this, but if my mind serves me right, he worked with Bruce Arians in his final year in Arizona, and he actually was a serviceable quarterback, not like starting caliber or anything, but he did okay. So I think if Tom Brady had a banged up ankle for a week, or he ends up leaving the game at his age, I think Gabbert could execute this offense to a low level enough that they can still remain relevant. Ryan Griffin has been a backup around the league as well, so you're going to have capable backup play. So 7th overall for the quarterback ranking, I think, is just the sweet spot for Tom Brady at this stage in his career, in that 7 to 10 range, depending how some of these other younger players step up. Then we've got the running back ranking, a little bit of a change in tone, as this is the worst ranking running back group in the league, even after signing LeSean McCoy, who couldn't even really get on the field for a depleted Kansas City backfield last year. But that's fine. Tom Brady's never had great running backs to work with. That's nothing new for him, and it's not like this is a very valuable position anyway. The one thing LeSean McCoy is really going to bring to the table here that I think you had question marks about is everything in the receiving game that you need with Tom Brady. And I can't emphasize need enough. I mean, think what James White brought to that offense. In a way, two specific assets. Pass protection, which is very important, especially with Tom Brady, who can't move, and just the ability to be on the same page in the quick game with Tom Brady. And Ronald Jones, while he has physical gifts and while he showed signs as a runner last year, and I do think Ronald Jones will play a role as a runner, that is his weakness, and it always has been, as far as the mental aspects in the receiving game, and just straight up like being able to consistently catch the ball and flip your hips and get upfield. It's just not Ronald Jones' game. He's kind of that full steam ahead, I don't want to say power back, but straight line speed threat. Let's just go with that as a runner. Now, they were hoping that they would get that in Keyshawn Vaughn, and they maybe did. The problem is, this is a weird season, and I think that they would have hoped to have more true practice time between Tom Brady and Keyshawn Vaughn, who, while I wasn't overly impressed with him as a runner, I did like what he showed as that receiving threat in a James White sort of way. So I didn't mind that pick, but I think it's going to take him quite some time to get up to speed, especially in a weird season where they're only getting a couple weeks of practice. This is obviously a team that wants to hit the ground running. They have to take on the Saints week 1, and I think LeSean McCoy is really going to help that transition happen. So I liked the signing of LeSean McCoy, but overall, this is just not a good running back room. You also have Raymond Calais, who I think was sort of insurance to the Keyshawn Vaughn pick. I like Raymond Calais. He's got some juice as a runner and really good elusiveness, ability to kind of make guys take weird angles as an outside zone runner, where he really succeeded in college. So you have a nice combination of skill sets here. I think we're going to see a lot of Ronald Jones on first down, kind of be used like the Sony Michel here. It's obviously going to be a different offense, but Sony Michel came off the field a lot in passing downs, and that's where we will see a lot of LeSean McCoy, where in that role I think he can be okay. So despite ranking 32nd, it's not like this is truly going to hold this team back. That's the nature of the running back position. Let's move on to the receiver ranking, where they're going to come in second. This is just clearly one of the most dominant receiving groups in the league. It starts, to me, with Chris Godwin. And I took some flack last year. I did my top 100 player projections list last August. I'm hoping to maybe get that done here in time before the season starts this year, by the way. But I took some flack because I had Chris Godwin on that list, and I did not have Mike Evans on that list. And people thought I was insane. And sure enough, Chris Godwin comes out and shows that Actually, he's the one with the elite athleticism. He's the one with the crisp route running, the guy that can line up anywhere and be an impossible cover. And on top of that is a run after catch machine with really good hands. Chris Godwin is very quickly emerging as a top 10, even close to a top 5 receiver in this league. And I think with Tom Brady, he's going to be the guy that has that rapport from day one, because Tom Brady, while he will take calculated jump ball attacks to Mike Evans, I think Mike Evans, who we'll talk about, will have a role here, a big role for a matter of fact, but Chris Godwin to me is going to be a guy that gets open quick and early. Brady's going to trust him to be that guy that can catch the ball short of the sticks and move the chains, and just might be the best wide receiver, other than that brief time with Antonio Brown, that Tom Brady has worked with. And in that time, by the way, Brown and Brady clicked immediately, which is something we could see here between Godwin and Brady. But anyway, this could be the most talented wide receiver that Tom Brady has worked with since Randy Moss, which is really exciting. And his play style, while he is a good vertical threat, Chris Godwin, he can absolutely be a dominant short to intermediate threat as well. But then you have Mike Evans, who to me is, as a number 2 wide receiver, you can't ask for anything better, because if Chris Godwin is that true number 1 who can move around, be effective on all 3 levels, be an impossible cover, who better than Mike Evans to be the number 2 guy where if Chris Godwin does get covered, Mike Evans will always be there as that. I don't want to discredit him by saying jump ball threat, because he can get open, but it's just not what he does best. But what he does do best is be that one-on-one, a 50-50 ball for Mike Evans, especially paired with Tom Brady's ball placement, is more of an 80-20 ball. So that's a lethal combination right there, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. You do have a lack of depth, might be why this receiver ranking isn't number 1 if you want to get into that, but I did love the Tyler Johnson pick. I had initially a late first round grade on him. You start to hear all these weird reports about off-field concerns. I live in Minneapolis. I've never really heard anything bad about Tyler Johnson, and his teammates have nothing but good things to say about him. So that one was a little out of nowhere and surprising, but he also has a lack of speed, and it was a very deep wide receiver class. So all of those things contributed to him falling to the 5th round. But think Keenan Allen here with Tyler Johnson, who did have similar speed concerns coming out of California. He did not have any character concerns as far as I'm aware of, but play style, very similar. Elite route runner for a college prospect, great release off the line of scrimmage. Did struggle with some drops, but to me as a 3rd wide receiver, he's a smart player with a lot of experience that's going to step in right away as a rookie and be this team's 3rd wide receiver. And he can play in the slot and he can play outside, which is really nice. I think he will be a very nice complement to those top 2 wide receivers. Then you're concerned after that. You've got Justin Watson, Scott Miller, whatever. I don't see them playing a big role here. And then Jaden Mickens, who had a little bit of flair in Jacksonville but fell off pretty quickly. So very top-heavy with Mike Evans and Godwin. You've got a good rookie, a steal in the 5th round in Tyler Johnson. But then not really a whole lot after that. Maybe Scott Miller competes for some slot reps with Tyler Johnson. But another thing contributing to this being the 2nd-ranked receiving group is going to be this tight end room, which is 3 deep. And it's actually unclear right now if you need to start that conversation with Rob Gronkowski, O.J. Howard, or Cameron Brate, because all 3 of these guys are very different. You have O.J. Howard, who's kind of trending, well, I guess his career trend has been all over the place, but you would hope trending upwards as, to me, an elite tight end prospect coming out of Alabama. In his 2nd season, really showed that, but then you look at his 1st season and what he did last year, and you've got concerns as far as his consistency, his blocking, all of it. All of the athletic tools in the world to emerge as one of the best tight ends in the league. And you really hope that with Tom Brady here, he can take that step up to be more like he was in his 2nd season. But you also have, in a lot of ways, upside and potential with Rob Gronkowski. And it's kind of weird to say that for a guy that's a Hall of Famer who we know works very well with Tom Brady. We just don't know what we're going to get from Rob Gronkowski. Not only did he retire, lose a bunch of weight, get into wrestling, but when he did play his final season in New England, he just was not the same player. So I think there's close to a 0% chance that you're getting Hall of Fame elite Rob Gronkowski here. Maybe the fountain of youth is strong in Tampa Bay, but I find that extremely unlikely. So I honestly think there's just as good of a chance for O.J. Howard to be the quote-unquote number one tight end than there is for Rob Gronkowski. Now, I do think Gronk will bring very nice skill sets to the table, even if they are more specific, as opposed to being a full-on, well-rounded tight end. I think he will still be a great technician and tenacious run blocker. Question is, how much strength does he still have after losing weight? Will he be more inline, or will he be flexed out a little bit more, playing more slot wide receiver? If he comes in closer to 245, 250 pounds, which is further removed from what he's used to playing at, closer to 265, 270 pounds, he might find that it's a little more difficult to block those defensive ends than he once did. So do we see him getting more weak side linebackers, getting more slot receivers, slot corners, flexed out a little bit more as more of a hybrid tight end? I think it's interesting to see how he's used, especially when you look at the question marks at that third wide receiver position. So I see a lot of upside for him to be used that way. And then you have Cameron Brate, who's the opposite, where we know exactly what he is. He is a solid, average tight end. Wish he blocked a little better for being what he is, but really safe pair of hands. And for a third tight end, that's really good. He would start for, I don't want to say a majority of teams in the NFL, but he'd be a starter on a lot of teams right now. So 3 deep at tight end, you're deeper at tight end than you are at receiver. You could make a strong case. And I find it really fascinating to see how Bruce Arians and Tom Brady are going to deploy all of these tight ends. And I think there's a lot of potential, especially early on, for these guys to really capture Tom Brady's strengths in that short to intermediate passing game. So this receiving group is, for good reason, a large part of the optimism here. Let's talk about the offensive line. They're going to rank 16th, smack dab in the middle. You've got some question marks here. So left tackle, you have Donovan Smith, who's a capable veteran, a little overpaid. They gave him what they had to retain a starting caliber tackle. We've seen that around the league. It is what it is. You just have to kind of pay up for these linemen. He's fine, and he probably had his best year of his career last year, which you like to see. So not a question mark per se, just not a strength at left tackle. I do like the left guard center combination. Ollie Marpet, one of the best guards in the league. So your plug and play right there. Ryan Jensen proved me wrong as a center last year. He was a really big free agent spend for this team in 2018. And frankly, his first season in Tampa Bay was not great. But he really stepped it up, paying up to that $10 million cap hit that this team gave him. So I think you have one of the top center and guard combinations there. The problem is your right guard is a massive question mark, the biggest question mark here. I do think it'll be a bit of a competition. Alex Kappa played there last year and was fine. This was a third-round pick in 2018. I did like him. Lacking some of those physical tools, but he's a tough player, and now being the clear weakest link on this offense, I think there's a chance for him to emerge as a clear-cut starting caliber player. But a lot of that is, I think, also going to hinge on what you get from Tristan Wirfs at right tackle. Now, I did love this pick. I think I gave it an A+. Excellent value. This was one of the best tackle classes maybe ever, and Wirfs ended up being the 4th one selected here. He had his ups and downs at Iowa, but the dude is an absolute freak, and he's tough. But I do have some questions on how well he will hold up as a rookie. You know, I think he'll be solid. I think he'll have his struggles, and I think there may be some games where he actually does get beat pretty bad, and it ends up impacting this offense that is going to rely on having good pass protection here. I think he would benefit a lot from having help from guys like Cameron Brate early on to make sure he can get up to speed, and I think that they will absolutely do that here. So that is a plus. If you really want to get into it, I think what Wirfs really actually ironically struggles with is his anchor. He has a massive loaded base. You look at this guy's thighs and his hamstring, like this dude has just massive legs, lower bodies, like the Saquon Barkley of tackles if you just want to look at his physical profile. But he doesn't always package it well, especially as a pass blocker. He's going to be a great run blocker from day one for sure. Flies off the ball, has great leverage. And there were some people that thought he translates better as a guard, which could still play out, but they're going to try him at tackle, and I think that's the right thing to do. You do have some veterans in here, in Joe Hag and Josh Wells. I think it increases the floor a little bit. It's not ideal if either of those guys have to play, because that means Kappa and Wirfs aren't playing well, or you've got an injury. But Hag, a guy that can play guard or tackle, so you're got insurance with Kappa and Wirfs. And then Wells is a capable swingman sixth guy off the bench who can play some tackle. There's potential for, say, Wirfs to kick into guard or Wells to play tackle. I don't think that's likely, but I think it's in the cards. And then I also like the pickup of Zach Shackelford, undrafted center out of Texas. Not ready to play right away, but a guy with some potential at that center position. So 16th for the offensive line. I don't think it's a strength, but I think they'll do a good job to buy enough time for Tom Brady to allow him to do what he wants to do and really not get in Bruce Arians and Tom Brady's way. So they are going to rank 6th for overall offense. I think you have a great combination of coach, quarterback, and receiving weapons here. We could see it take a little bit more time to get rolling. And I think you could even make a case, too, that at Tom Brady's age, with some of his physical limitations, this might not ever be a crazy, quote-unquote, unstoppable offense. But I think the consistency that we're going to see here of this team just constantly, week to week, putting up 24 to 30 points, counts for a lot, even if this isn't a team that might not necessarily go head-to-head with the Chiefs in a shootout scoring 42 points. But that is why you have a defense, right? Hopefully 24 to 30 points is enough to win you a lot of football games, and that's what this team is counting on. So they're going to rank 13th on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm excited to talk about this defensive group all in the same here, led by Todd Bowles with this 3-4 group. So let's start with the front seven and the run defense, where they're going to rank 6th. This team drafted Vita Vea in the first round in 2018, and he is really developed. And you know, it's one of these things where you can't just hold a guy to your draft takes for the course of his career. I still think it was a mistake to draft this guy over Derwin James, and I think if they did it again, they would switch it. But that doesn't mean Vita Vea is not an incredible football player. Unfortunately, it's at a nose tackle position that just isn't all that valuable. But what Vita Vea has done that I did not anticipate, and credit the people that did see this coming, is he's developed into a, I don't want to say elite pass rusher, but he is contributed as a pass rusher and shown the ability, unlike a lot of nose tackles his size, to fly off the ball, get your hands inside, and create pressure. So he has done enough to separate himself from being the next Danny Shelton, where he literally has to come off the field on third downs, which is, I don't want to say a liability, but you just don't invest a lot in that. And Vita Vea has proved to be a 3-down defensive tackle who could continue to develop here in year 3. So removing him from Derwin James, he is a very good nose tackle and a big reason this team is going to rank 6th for run defense. But it's not just him. You have Ndamukong Suh, who at his age isn't quite what he once was as a pass rusher, and frankly, he never was an elite pass rusher other than maybe a year or two, but he is still a dominant run defender. The dude's always healthy, and you hope that he can have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, knowing the career that his career is nearing an end, that he fell short to getting that Super Bowl with the Rams, where we really saw him kick it on late in that season. So hoping to get some juice left from Ndamukong Suh that I think they definitely will. The depth after that is a bit of a concern. You got some undersized guys on the edge with William Golson, Raheem Nunez-Roches is in there, Patrick O'Connor, Jeremiah Ledbetter. They do draft a raw, explosive Khalil Davis in the 6th round. I don't know what you'll get from him. But then on the edge, very capable. You got Jason Pierre-Paul, Shaquille Barrett, Anthony Nelson. Nothing bad to say about that group. And then you have an awesome linebacker group. Devin White, I think, has a chance to emerge as a top run-defending linebacker in this league. Levante David, an excellent run-fit player as well. So nothing bad to say about this run offense, ranking 6th. Now let's talk about the pass rush. And that means we get to talk about Shaq Barrett. And we see a player or two like this every year, where they have an anomaly season. And that's what happened with Shaq Barrett. And it's unfortunate that I got to sit here and talk down about Shaq Barrett, who led the NFL in sacks last year, was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate for the first half of the season. I don't want to talk down about him because I thought it was a phenomenal signing. I said it at the time. I thought he was an excellent fit here. He was a player that Denver let go because they just had enough bodies at that edge position. And I'm not going to say that his season was a fluke. It was an outlier. He's not a 20-sack player. It's why this team franchise tagged him and didn't give him a long-term extension. You don't just go from a capable starter to elite, high-end, $25 million a year, now with the contracts these days, pass rusher in one season. So I hope he repeats what he did last year, which was one of the best edge players in the league. I don't expect that to happen. I think from any reasonable football fan, you would expect pretty major regression to the mean with Shaq Barrett, where he's going to be 8 to 10 sack player, get about 60 pressures. I think that's actually, based on his career, pretty optimistic projection. But fortunately, he's surrounded by some pretty good talent here. So you have Jason Pierre-Paul, who I'm, again, very low on. He's not what he once was with the Giants. He still has exceptional athleticism. He'll fly off the ball. He's got length. He's going to be able to accomplish a lot. And being potentially this team's fourth best pass rusher is not a bad role for Jason Pierre-Paul. I would say they probably gave him a little bit too much money, but it is what it is. They have a good team intact for this season, which is frankly all they really care about here in Tampa Bay. So they wanted to sustain that position and do what they needed to get that done. But then on the interior, you have Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh, who neither are elite interior pressure getters. But honestly, you have four really solid pass rushers here. All guys that can win one-on-one matchups. You don't have that one guy that you necessarily have to double team, and the depth isn't very good. You really just have Anthony Nelson, who's a capable, long, kind of awkward scheme fit in a 3-4 defense. He's more of a 4-3 defensive end type, but is a good rotational piece who they'll mix in there. But you just don't have that superstar here. I'm sorry, Bucs fans. Shaquille Barrett, to me, is not a superstar. He's a star player. He's a good player. But I do think this pass rush is going to be good enough. I just don't think it's going to be terrifying or elite from any stretch of the imagination. I will lastly mention another undrafted pickup I liked here. This team had three really good undrafted pickups, I think, between Shackelford at center, Michael Divinity here at linebacker, and then Parnell Motley at corner, who we'll talk about. But Michael Divinity, we'll see how this team uses him. We'll see if he even makes this team or earns any sort of role. But I like him as sort of a first down relief pitcher for Jason Pierre-Paul. Pierre-Paul's a guy that struggled with injuries. Divinity's an interesting player. He played sort of this hybrid 3-4 outside linebacker at LSU, and I think he could actually play a role as an undrafted rookie right away. A very disciplined player with a lot of instincts and time played at LSU. Was banged up in his final season, was by most considered a third to a fourth round prospect that this team got because of those injuries. So do keep an eye on Michael Divinity there out of LSU. If he's even viewed as an outside linebacker in this scheme, he's actually listed right now as an inside. So we'll see, but I did like that pickup quite a bit, which is a nice transition to this linebacker ranking, which is the number one linebacker group in the NFL, in my opinion. So you have Lavonte David, who could actually make a pretty strong case, was the best linebacker in football last year. I think he's right there with Eric Kendricks. Obviously, you're still going to have Bobby Wagner up there, but Lavonte David is right there with these guys. A true do-it-all superstar athlete at the linebacker position. And then you have Devin White, who I think in year two is poised for big, big things. Loved him coming out of LSU. Did think he was a guy that could have a bit of a slower start, as a guy that was a true junior coming out. It's a linebacker position that is difficult to learn. We've seen similar things with Roquan Smith with the Bears in Chicago. But Devin White, I think, even more than Roquan did as a rookie, showed a lot in the second half of the season. It felt like he was making a big play every week, showing that sideline to sideline speed, starting to get more up to speed with some of the coverages, route recognition, all that stuff that is required to play linebacker at a high level in the NFL. And I mean, I know it's a little bit aggressive to say this and a little bit hot takey, but if Devin White and Lavonte David were the first and second best linebackers in the NFL this season, I wouldn't blink an eye. I think that they seriously have that sort of potential. You could make a case that they were both top 5 guys for the last month of last season or so. So seriously high expectations. And as we transition to the secondary in just a second, these guys are going to do a really nice job to be true impacts in the coverage group here and take some of the pressure off of this really young secondary. The depth here is minimal. You have Jack Sitchie, 6th round pick last year, Chappelle Russell, a raw 7th round pick, a veteran in Kevin Minter, and then we mentioned Michael Divinity, who could potentially step up if he makes the team at middle. They got to stay healthy. Their depth there is just not very good, and I think that schematically they will put a lot of pressure on these guys to be a large role in coverage. But the defensive back ranking going to come in 25th. Simply put, it is a young group in the secondary here. Now, they have a lot of upside, and I like a lot of the players here. So let's go through it. Jamel Dean, to me, is the first corner I want to talk about. I've talked to some people that are remarkably high on Dean, and he'll play some slot, he'll play outside. It's actually rather unclear as far as who your top 2 starters are going to be, and then who's your nickel corner. I think what's likely here is we actually get Sean Murphy-Bunting and Jamel Dean in base packages. And then for nickel packages, I think it'll be Carlton Davis, and they'll slide Jamel Dean or Sean Murphy-Bunting inside. Dean is a player who is physically similar to Stephon Gilmore, 6'1", 205, which is a thick and long corner. But his speed and athleticism are rare. And he played outstanding down the stretch last year. He is one of the more unknown potential superstars in this league because you have 2 other guys here that are probably bigger names in Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy-Bunting, both 2nd-round picks here. But to me, Jamel Dean is the guy that really has... Well, and I don't want to talk bad about Sean Murphy-Bunting by any stretch of the imagination because I loved him coming out. But Jamel Dean is a guy that showed it on tape, and I've talked to a lot of people that think he is poised to emerge as an elite corner in this league. And I don't say that lightly. So he's got to prove it, but the upside is absolutely there. Then you have Sean Murphy-Bunting, who I thought very similarly coming out of Central Michigan. My comparison for him coming out was Darius Slay, and they took him right around where I had him graded as an early 2nd-round guy who, if you took him in the late 1st, it wouldn't stun me. Again, though, a guy coming from lower level of competition, showed some really nice things as a rookie. It's a corner position that takes a lot of time to get up to speed if you want to be considered a top corner, and it's just a matter of how much development does he show. But between Dean and Bunting, you're talking about lengthy corners who can do everything. Press guys, play off coverage, run with the fastest receivers in the league, have the quickness to match some of the short to intermediate stuff. You have some seriously elite upside between Dean and Murphy-Bunting. Problem is, they're very young and unproven. And then you have Carlton Davis, who to me has actually impressed me a little more than I thought he would. I did not like that pick coming out, but I'll always give credit where credit's due. He's proved to be a very physical, starting caliber, lengthy corner. I see the upside in this secondary being with Dean and Bunting because of the speed and ability to do everything, especially in a scheme like this with Todd Bowles where he's going to get a little exotic. You know, if Carlton Davis was in like Seattle where he's running press cover 3 all the time, I'd feel much better about him. But that's why I think we might see a little bit less Davis and a little more Dean and Murphy-Bunting this year. But overall, it's a good young secondary there at the corner spot. And then your safeties, I mean, anyone that's been around this channel knows how much I loved Antoine Winfield. I thought he was a top 20 player in this class, one of 20 to 24 players or so that had true first-round grade. How he was not a first-round pick is simply beyond me. He was my number 1 safety in this class. My comp for him is Tyrann Mathieu as a true, versatile, do-it-all safety. Can play free safety, can come down, play slot corner, can play a traditional strong safety role. His ball skills, his instincts, his football IQ, his athleticism. He came out and proved that running a 4.45. The only question with him is health. He was a 4th-year sophomore coming out of Minnesota because he had been medically redshirted twice. Now, he did stay healthy in his final season and was one of the best players in college football, straight up. So I see him as a day one starter. He is a rookie, so it's hard to expect elite play from there, but this has been a really lacking safety group, and they knocked this pick out of the park, in my opinion. And then you're going to have pretty much a wide open competition, in my opinion, for the other safety spot. Now, these guys will rotate. I don't think you'll have a true free safety, strong safety relationship in this scheme, which is fine because everyone they have here can do a little bit of everything. You've got Justin Evans, who, if healthy, I do think will be the other safety here. But then you have Mike Edwards, who they like, a third-round pick last year. Kind of a high floor, low ceiling type of safety, good tackler, smart player. Just not elite coverage athleticism or instincts or ball skills or anything like that. And then Jordan Whitehead, who is a little bit more of a slot corner, strong safety type. I wouldn't be stunned if he played much more corner here overall this year with some of the more safety depth they have now, lacking some more of that corner depth. But I think all four of these guys can play as starting caliber players. But again, none of them are elite. None of them are proven. It's just a young secondary with a ton of potential. I do got to talk about the cornerback depth behind the top three guys we talked about. They bring back Ryan Smith, who's an athletic veteran here. Not much to speak of there. And then I want to talk about Parnell Motley. Really good tape coming out of Oklahoma. To me, it's still a little unclear why he went undrafted. I think most people that evaluated him had third to fourth round grades on him, if not higher. Really good zone instincts, really quick feet. Not a speedster, but, think sort of Casey Hayward. A really poor man's version of that, where you play him in off coverage. He's not an elite press corner, and the guy's just got to make plays. So I thought that was a really good pickup as well. I think they got 3 draftable players in Parnell Motley, Michael Divinity, and Zach Shackelford. Honestly, guys that if they were fourth-round picks by any team, I wouldn't blink an eye. So what this team was able to do through the draft was just remarkable. And we'll see if those guys can reach those expectations. So while I have a lot of good things to say about this secondary, I think day one, it's hard to rank them too high. They come in 25th. I don't think it's going to be a liability day one. But over the course of the season, I would be pretty surprised if this 25th ranking held up. I think this has top 10 upside eventually. Probably not this year. It's just hard to expect all these young guys to reach those ceilings so quickly. But man, do you have youth and explosiveness. And I think heading into 2021, despite this 25th ranking, I think we'll be probably talking at least about a top 16 secondary. So there's your defensive review. We talked about how this is going to be a stable, efficient offense while potentially not insanely explosive because of Tom Brady's skill set. Well, you have a defense in place ranking 13th here that I think is going to do a great job keeping the score down. You might have some hiccup games with this young secondary, especially if this pass rush goes against really good offensive lines. I think there's going to be weeks where this defense can struggle a little bit. But overall, you're talking about a really well-rounded defense with a really good defensive coordinator in Todd Bowles that I think as the season goes on has a chance to become a frankly lethal defense, especially if you can get like Shaq Barrett to repeat what he did last year as a pass rusher, and you can get these secondary guys to really reach their upside. Look out. So there is your roster review. We're going to wrap up taking a look at this team's schedule. It is not the easiest schedule, to be completely honest. They've got 2 tough road games out the gate with New Orleans and Denver, who's strangely good in the first month of the season at home. And I do think that it could take a little bit of time for Tom Brady to establish high-end chemistry with these guys. And as we talked about, this defense might not be quite what they will be at the end of the season, at the beginning of the season. So I do have them actually starting 2-3 with 3 road losses against really good defenses with exceptional pass rushes that I think are going to make Tom Brady struggle early on. But I think they bunker down and really turn the season around and win 6 straight with Green Bay. They get really cakewalk games with the Raiders, the Giants. You love that you get a game like you get all of your cold weather games out of the way before the winter hits. Like, that's a huge break for this team because Tom Brady at his age, that weather, the cold weather, if it's snowy, the elements, as we saw last year, they can make a bigger impact on him who's losing some of that arm talent. But getting a game at New York out of the way, getting a game at Chicago and at Denver out of the way early, you don't play a cold weather game in the second half of your season when this team is probably going to be hitting their stride. So you've got New Orleans at home, at Carolina, the Rams at home. I got them winning those. You do have to take on Kansas City and Minnesota. I think they'll probably split those. They could even lose both of those. I don't know. But then you get two dome games, two dome games with Atlanta and Detroit, and then a home game in warm weather Florida against Atlanta, Detroit, and then Atlanta again. I actually did pick Detroit to win that game. So I'll stand by that for now, but I'll put that question mark next to it. You just got the Patricia familiar with Tom Brady aspect going on there. So that was a lot of fun. I'm curious what you guys think. This is going to be a pretty polarizing team. It always is with Tom Brady. This Buccaneers team has been polarizing over the years. Now, it's hard to expect what we're going to get from this Bucs team, but I don't know if there's a more interesting team heading into this interesting 2020 season. So it's fun to talk about them. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Please do hit that like button if you enjoy this video and the series. Until next time, guys, cheers, and we'll see you later. Peace out.